Howdy folks, Little John, and time for a little chat about attenuation yeast and final gravity. A bit of a Pacific Ocean corn ale to get us by. Shout out to all the patrons. Cheers guys, all the subscribers. If you're not a subscriber to Little John, hit the button down there in the corner. Ring the bell, get notified when there's a new video so you don't miss anything. Anyway, today, I said, talking attenuation. Now, it's a subject you don't see dealt with directly too often, and probably should be. So, thought I'd give it a go. There's been a lot of people on forums and Facebook and stuff lately, a lot of new brewers, particularly newer brewers, but even a lot of the more experienced brewers still don't fully understand attenuation and how it works and how it affects their brews, and how to allow for it when they're going through their brew process and bottling and stuff like that. Okay, so hence why I wanted to talk about it today, because like I said, there is a lack of information. It's there if you go and find it, but it's not easily available. So let's start off. Attenuation, big word. There's a few big words in this old brewing caper, but attenuation basically refers to the amount of sugars that a yeast will eat in a wort. So it's normally expressed as a percentage. So you'll see on the yeast it'll say attenuation, 72 to 75%, or 75 to 78, or it might say high attenuation or medium attenuation. So you need to understand what that means to know what it's going to do with your beer. So when you're making your beer, making your wort, or whether it's all grain or you're mixing up a tin, there are sugars in the wort, which is what's going to convert to alcohol, which is our gravity readings. So the attenuation of the yeast is a percentage of those sugars in your original wort that yeast will eat, given a standard sort of fermentability on the wort. Now, that's the little band we're going to really look at today, and we're not going to get too technical. I just want to keep it fairly simple, like with everything Little John. If you want to find out the real technical stuff, go and look for it. There's not enough time to worry about it today. Okay, so we're talking fermentability of your wort. Now if you go back, you can have a look at the previous videos on ABV, on increasing your alcohol in your wort, and that goes a little bit into the fermentability of different sugars and different malt extracts. But all wort, whether it's all grain or if it's a kit, or whether it's malt based, dry malt or liquid malt, all has a fermentability. And when you start playing around with that, then you get a difference in the attenuation. So essentially, you pick up your yeast. If you get a pack of US 05, the attenuation will be listed somewhere between 72 and 78 is sort of standard for US 05. And I said 75% is sort of a fairly safe number, and most yeast will attenuate in that sort of area. Some will go lower, some will go a little bit higher. But that's sort of your standard sort of a mark. So given that, if you've made an average sort of a wort and it's at 1040 starting gravity, you know that you're going to eat 75% of those sugars, or expect to. So you'd expect to get a final gravity of 1010. Now, you see this in recipes, it's referred to as expected gravity. It is what you're expecting to get to given a standard ferment at that normal attenuation. Now, certain things will throw that attenuation out, and main ones are your fermentables. So if you're brewing a standard kit, you know, your standard Cooper's kit, Blackrock Morgan's, whatever it is, and you add 1 kilo of dextrose to that, then you're going to get a higher attenuation than that 75%. And quite often you'll see quite a lot of kit brewers will get, you know, 85% attenuation. You know, that 1040B will come down to, you know, 1005. Normally not with dextrose, because dextrose is 90% fermentable. So you're chewing a little, you chew more. If you're adding malt to that kit, the malt's only 65, 70, you know, well, 60 to 70 sort of percent, depending on the malt you got, fermentable. So you see there's a gap there. So if you've got more malt in your wort originally, you might not quite get to your 75%. You might stop at 72, 73, 74. In that case, that 1040 wort is going to finish at maybe 1012. If you take that, if that 1040 wort is made from a kit and say just a kilo of plain white table sugar, which is pretty much 100% fermentable, then your attenuation is going to push up, and I said you might get into that 80, 85 range. It's unusual to get an 85 range without a little bit of help, but it can happen. So the main drivers of variability are your sugars or your malts that you're adding. So if you're going with simple sugars, white sugar, table sugar, all dextrose, you're going to get a higher attenuation and a lower final gravity. Okay. Now that works from the way you're getting more alcohol out of your batch. So if you're looking for higher alcohol, then that's what you're going to get. But you're also going to get thinner body, because you've got less sugars left in your brew. And this is another thing that you look at with your attenuation. You're working on how much body you're going to have left in you, expected to have left in your beer. Now, so you've got just dry malt and nothing else, then you're going to drop that attenuation back a little bit, because you've got more unfermentable sugar. And this is why I recommend having that sort of kilo of malt and 200 or 300 grams of dextrose to add to your kit. So you get a balance of both, and so you'll still finish up around that 75% mark. Now again, we're talking USO5, which is in that band. Now if you take that another step and you start adding a grain steep into that kit beer, then you start adding more unfermentable sugars again. And again, it will vary depending on what actual grain you use. And exactly how you do it. If you're doing a mash, then if you're mashing just some base malts, some pale ales, some maris, some pilsner, and you're using that instead of dry malt or liquid malt, so you're actually doing a mini mash to add with your kit, then you're still going to be in that sort of in that 75, maybe just under that 75% range, because you're still working with a reasonably fermentable wort. If you're actually just steeping, so if you're using crystal malts, chocolates, caras, stuff like that, then you're not mashing, so you're not converting any of the sugars that you're getting from that into anything that's fermentable. And that's a whole different book, whole different thing. That's mashing and, you know, different subject. But if you aren't mashing, if you're just steeping, you are going to get fermentable sugars from your grain. So therefore, your attenuation comes down, and your gravity comes up. Okay, you see guys all the time. They're knocking out lagers and pale ales. They're coming out at 10:10, 10:08, 10:12, and they do a stout, and suddenly it stops at 10:18, 10:20, and it's like, what's happened? I've done a stout. I must have killed my yeast somehow with this new process. No, you've just got a whole whack of grains or malt that isn't fermentable. So your attenuation is pulled down. So it's not uncommon for that sort of thing to happen. Just pure example, today I've just taken a reading on my, I've got the choc rye PA sitting in the fermenter. It's finished at 10:20. It's not a lot of specialty grain in there, a little bit of chocolate, some rye, but it was around 20% of the grain bill, and it's highly unfermentable. So I've got a yeast which is using S33. I'm not sure exactly what the attenuation on that is. I think it's probably leans at 72 to 75, so it's got a tendency to creep a little bit lower. So as a result, the gravity's come up. I'm happy with that because it's a bigger beer, it's going to have some body. I'm quite happy. But you need to be aware this is going to happen. So when your beer does stop at 10:16 or 10:18, you don't go into panic mode, which is what you're seeing all left, right and centre. My beer hasn't finished. Why hasn't it gone to 10:08 or 10:06 like my first beer did, or like it tells me on the can? Because you haven't got the unfermentables. So that's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is the yeast strains themselves have varying attenuation levels. As a general rule, most American ale yeasts are around that 75% mark, and they're fairly steady on that. You push into the English yeast, and English yeast tends to be a little bit lower. It's a bit lazier. It doesn't work quite as hard. It doesn't eat quite as much of the sugars. So they will finish out at 68 to 72% quite often. Not every time. Nottingham is a prime example of pommy yeast that really will push quite happily to 78, in that mark. Tends to push a little bit higher than the USA 5 without any real effort. I've found anyway that on comparable beer, the Nottingham will be a little bit higher attenuating, and so you'll often see people recommend it for doing dry stouts and stuff like that, because it still gives you a sort of pommy feel, but it takes a bit more sugar out. But most of your pommies, so SA4 particularly, it's well known for it. But things like your Empire Ale from Glengrove Jacks, your Burtons, your Ringwoods, all those sort of typical English yeast will push down on the lower side. So you'll find, like if you're doing pommy stouts, if you're doing a pommy pale ale or a pommy bitter, they will have more body. They'll have more sugar left in them. So they tend to finish, as a result, with lower alcohol, but a lot more flavour. So again, you need to be looking at that and working out where am I going. So when you're doing your recipe creation, and you're looking at a recipe and you're looking to brew a certain style of beer, you need to look at your yeast. What sort of attenuation are you expecting to get from it? And then what sort of malt are you going to feed that to let it do what it wants to do? making sure you are going to get the attenuation that it wants. Okay. Like I said, you'll get your head around it after you've played around with a bit of yeast and you've done some playing and you've mucked around with your recipes. And this is again where taking really good notes is important. So you can look back at different beers and go through your logs and look at a beer and go, okay, well this one finished at 10-16, and you can sit down and when you've done it a few times, you can sit and start to piece together the jigsaw that is, the recipes and why they've come out like they have. And you start to understand what it is you're doing. We all start off a bit blindly and going, put this in, put that in, put that on top and stick it on the bench, and it's going to come out somewhere in there. And as we grow and we start playing around, we start putting different things, and we start finding instead of ending there, things start ending here and here. And if we got the notes and a little bit of understanding about what's contributing different things, then we can understand why we're here and not there. And then you start to know, okay, when I'm brewing a beer, I'm expecting to finish here, so when it doesn't finish there, you're not freaked out. Okay, well, I'm not going to go any further on that. That's it. It's a very detailed topic with a lot of little intricacies and things that will have an impact. So it's not anywhere near as simple as what I'll put it. But that gives you an overview in a nutshell of what you're looking at. Okay, if you've got any questions, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty of questions on this topic, or any comments, stick them down the bottom. Ask away. I said, if there's stuff on attenuation you're not real clear on, you want to play around with different yeast, do some research, do some searching, get on the bloody interweb, get your fingers out and look for stuff. There is information there, you just need to delve a little bit for it. It's not going to come to you easily. Okay? As I said, I'm always happy to answer any questions with as much information as I can, with as much knowledge as I can give you. Okay? I said, if you haven't subscribed to Little John, hit the button down there in the corner. Patrons. Cheers, guys. Anyone who got hops, I hope you'll enjoy them. But that's it. I'm done. I'm out of here. Little John. So until I see you again, we're brewing beer, drinking beer, or we talking beer. Good brewing.